This is going to be video number 9 on the 6-cycle oddball, and today we're going to show you how to make the valves. I don't use the same method they do. I have my own method of making valves, and we're going to do the valve springs and the valve keepers. So it shows the valve as being 1.25 inches long, and the way I make a valve is I use a piece of drill rod and an Allen set screw. So I use an Allen set screw and a piece of drill rod. And the first thing you want to do is make sure your drill rod fits in your valve guide nice and smooth like that. So you can just push it right in. Because once you put the head on this, it's very hard to smooth that out and make it or make it smaller. Sometimes you have to take a half a thou off it or something. And I usually do that with sandpaper and a polishing cloth. So make sure this fits in there nice and smooth before you put the heads on. Step number 1 on this is to prepare the head for the valve head. And what I do is I use a collet here. You could use a chuck too, but it's just a little harder to work with a chuck. My chuck is much too big for this. I'm going to put that in there with enough protruding so I can part it off. Now I'm going to take a 3/32 drill that just fits inside that hex without taking out the hex at all, because I need that hex when I lap the valve. That's the whole idea of using a Allen screw, is so you can lap it easy. So I'm going to drill in there about 300 thousandths. Leave the drill in there. I'll do both of them. Now you have to protrude that a little more. I didn't leave quite enough. And now I'm going to part that off. I'm going to try to make these approximately the same width. So now I'm changing over to a 1/8 inch collet. I'm going to put the valve stems in there. And I've already rounded one end, so this is going to be the bottom end of the valve, and this is the top. And what I got to do is turn that down so it fits a 3/32 hole. Determine how much I'm going to turn, and the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to measure this, probably with this end here, about 100, at least an 1/8 inch. So I'm going to turn a little, just a hair over an 1/8 inch, about 130. So I don't want that to protrude up into the hex, because I need the hex, like I said, to lap the valve. The first thing I'm going to do is set that up for 130 thousandths. 130 is right there. We'll stop. Then I'm going to turn that down to 3/32, which is what? 0.93. So that's 0.93, so I got to take off about 20. Let's try to take 5. Now this just has to fit on there nice. That goes on there good. You want a fairly good fit so it doesn't cock way off, because then you're going to have to turn more off of the head of the valve. But that's a good fit. It'll give clearance for the silver solder. So now we got to take that one out. So that's going to be number 1. Now we got to get number 2. If I do this right, I should be able to just check that. That's good. Perfect. Little piece with a couple of holes in it to hold those valves so I can silver braze them. Fit right in that hole like that and like this. So the next thing we've got to do is put some flux on them. And I didn't use any cutting oil when I did that, except on the heads. So I'm going to just clean those out quick. Those I didn't use any cutting oil on, so they should be fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put flux on this piece. Because what you don't want is you don't want the silver to travel up inside the hex, because if it gets up inside the hex, then the hex wrench won't fit in it. So I'm just putting it on the shaft and pushing it in there. Little tiny bit. Okay. Just a little bit. I'm just going to give it a little turn when I push it in there. So there's only a tiny bit of flux on that. Then the next thing I'm going to do is put a little bit of silver in there. And first I'm going to flatten it out. One of my subscribers suggested this, and I really like the idea. First place, if it's round, you can, on some items, when you put the torch to it, it blows it off, it rolls off. But if it's flat, it won't roll. So it's also easier to cut a little tiny piece when it's flat. It only takes a minuscule amount. If you put too much silver braze in it, it'll run up into the hex, and you don't want that. So I'm going to cut a piece that's very, very small here for both of them. I'll show it to you in the tweezers. Okay. Go slow. There's the amount I'm putting in there. You can see by my finger it's very, very tiny. And it has to fit down inside the hex, like that. And now I got to get another little piece. And there it is. And that's all I'm putting in there. I'm just going to heat that up until that silver solder runs down inside. And if Jim can show you here, that's full penetration. It came out the bottom of that shaft. It's pretty hard to see. Maybe I can turn it so we can see it. This is still hot, so I got to use the tweezers. Can you see that came out the bottom? As you can see, we got good penetration on both those valves. So now I got to drill the hole in the end for the keeper. And I have a little jig here, and it has an adjustable bolt here, so I know exactly where it is. And I keep this set for valves, and it's marked here, number 59 drill. Put a little oil on that. As you can see, that's right smack in the end. So now I'm going to put it back in the collet, and I'm just going to take those threads off of there. just so it looks better. And then I will do the valve face. I didn't quite get them all. That's pretty close. Now I have the compound set at 46 degrees. We cut the valve seat at 45, so this gives a one degree interference fit at the top of the valve. So I'm just going to take enough off so I can see it all the way around, and I'll know that I have that, because it's already 45 degrees. So I'm just going to touch that till I get it basically concentric with the valve stem. Those were light cuts of just 1,000, and you can see there's still a little black showing there. So I've got to go in just a tiny bit more to get that all the way around. We'll go in 2 and see what happens. Not quite enough. You can still see it flashing there, so we'll go in another 2. Let's see if we can get it this time. So there it is, the finished valve.
Go ahead.
It's still showing a little thread on there, but that doesn't matter. You won't see that once it's inside the engine. And believe me, that head is on there really good. And it's perfectly concentric with the so now all I have to do is put this in the drill press, and I'll polish that up a little bit, and that'll be the end of it. I'm just going to hit that with some 500 grit and then some emery. The next thing we got to do is make the little valve keeper, so that it just has a 1/8 hole and a little recess, because I just put a piece of wire through there to hold it in. So I got to get a piece of 5/16. Now this already has a 1/8 hole in it because I've worked with it before, but it isn't deep enough. I got to drill that a little deeper. Now I'm going to turn the outside, and I think this is the right diameter because I made some valve keepers before out of that. 5. This is 287, yeah, so that's about right. That's about what it is. I'm just going to extend that up a little bit. I can use this tool, I think. That's good. That'll work. Now we need a recess in this end for the little wire that holds the valve in place. So what I'm going to do is use a, what is this? This is a 7/32 end mill, and go in there about 25 to 30 thousandths. Make the recess. Now I've gone in there 25 thousandths, which is the thickness of the wire. So I'm going to start here. First I'm going to go in the depth enough to get the spring wire around it. That's about 25 thousandths. Then I'm going to move it over and part it off. So there it is. We got to grind this off. Maybe I can just pinch it off with my fingernails here. But that has to be ground off of there. I'll show you it after it's finished. Now I got to protrude that out and make the second one. So there's the outside dimension. And now I've got to do the recess. I'm going to go about 25 to 30 thousandths deep on this. We're going to move about 25 for the recess and 25 for the thickness. Go in there about the inside diameter of the spring, which is about that much. Go over a little bit. Make the step. Cut it right off. So I'm just going to sand the burr off the bottom of these. So there's the finished pieces. You see they have a little step for the spring. So we'll make the springs now. We're going to make these two springs. The exhaust spring is 22 thousandths music wire. I think both of these are pretty light. I'm going to go a little heavier. I know that I did on the other one because 13 thousandths diameter wire is pretty light for a intake valve. I'd like 15 or more. And this one here can go to 25. So you can use what you want. It's sort of a guessing game, but you have to have enough spring here to close the intake valve. And with 13 thousandths, boy, it's a very light touch. This is the spring winder that I have. And I made this up some years ago to an article in Home Shop Machinist. And it had quite a few features that I found out that I really didn't need because I only make short springs. And this is for making long springs when you use this to set the thickness and this to tension it and so forth. What I do is I just make a mandrel and I hold it by hand. I'll show you how that's done. And I've already made the mandrel for it and I'll give you the dimension of that. You usually have to experiment with the diameter of this to get it the right diameter. This one here is 170 and it gives me a valve spring that's approximately 1/4 inch ID, and that's what I'm shooting for, 1/4 inch. So this is a piece of 13 thousandths wire that I had around, and I did this before, and I'll show you how light it is. This is I use to hold the tension on the wire. I've got a hole in the end here. If I can get it in the thread, bend that around. And then I pull some tension on it and put a couple of turns. Spring. And as you can see, that spring is very light. Yeah, there's the spring. There's not enough coils in this one. They wanted, I think, 20 coils. But as you can see, this spring is almost nothing. So I would say 15 would be better. And I don't have any 15, but I do have the 25 for the exhaust valve. I made a mistake. This is actually 24 thousandths that I used instead of 25. But that's close enough. What I do is I take off a piece that I know is plenty long and cut it. Yeah, that's quite a bit too long, but that's okay. Okay, now I just put a lot of tension on it. And I'm going to do 2 flat coils, and then I'm going to do the coils that Now I'm going to do 2 together. You can always cut those off afterwards. And you're going to cut this one off. Trim the spring up. There. I will put that on the valve, and you can. This is the exhaust port. Just put something there to hold it. Take my keeper. I'll need a piece of wire too. I have to get a piece of wire here. I'm just going to cut a little piece of wire here. This, gonna hold that valve, push that down. Put the wire through the hole. I need the tweezers. There, I finally got it in. And as you can see, that holds that valve nice and tight. And I got to order some 15 thousandths for the other one. The other little trick I do of lapping valves is I put something underneath it that will push the valve back up, so I don't have to lift it up and down. So all I'm going to do is put this piece of foam under here. I really need a taller piece of foam. Let me get a taller piece of foam here. Now, as you can see, by using that piece of foam, and the paper is just to keep the valve stem from drilling a hole in the foam. So now if I push down on it, I can lap it, and then it automatically pops up. And the reason you want to do that is so more lapping compound will work its way in there and you can keep doing it. The reason for the hex, see, I can just take that and do that. So we'll put a little lapping compound on it and do that a few times. This is a 280 grit lapping compound that I have here. I also have 500, but that's a little fine. It doesn't hardly even cut. You can see how fast you can do this. It's very hard to do these valves if you don't have something to spin them with. I've tried the drill press and everything else, but this is the best method I've ever come up with. And these valves are pretty good, so they're not going to take a lot of lapping. That's probably enough right there. I'm just going to go a little extra. I'm going to clean it off and have a look at it. It's impossible to show this on the camera, but I have a nice gray line all the way around there, and it's the full width of the valve seat, so I know that it's hitting pretty nicely. Now I'm going to check the valve seat the same way. It should be lapped all the way around, and you got to make sure you get all that valve compound out of there because it'll screw up the valve guide. And that's polished all the way around. Let me make sure that that's clean. Now, I don't know if we can test this or not. We'll try testing it and see how good it is. This is a little vacuum tester from an automobile brake system. I think it's used to draw the fluid in, and it works really good for testing valves. I'm going to put some oil on the valve stem there a couple of times. We've got to get some oil on the stem because the stem is going to leak quite a bit if you don't have oil on it. Okay, now make sure the needle valve's closed. So now we're going to do the exhaust valve. I got to get some lapping compound onto it. Doesn't take a lot, just around the edge here. A little too much thickness on that foam, that's better. Okay, let's take a look at that. I bet you that's enough. Yeah, it's all the way around there. It's a little polished area. It'd be almost impossible to show you this, but it's completely all the way around. And I'll do the same with the seat. I'll get a Q-tip, clean that seat off, and see if there's any dark spots in it. Get it up into the light here. Looks like it's hitting all the way around, so that should be good. Now, I can't test these. We just tried my tester, and my tester's broken, so I either got to fix that or buy another one. But there's a full video on lapping and testing valves that I made some time ago. You can go back to that and refer to it and see how the tester works. So that's the end of the video for now, and please, if you liked what you saw, subscribe to my channel and be sure and give us a thumbs up. I notice a lot of people don't give us a thumbs up after they watch the video, so please give us a thumbs up. It helps us a lot. Thank you very much.